Welcome to GovCast, keeping up with federal IT's top decision makers. I'm Alexander Bulova, production lead at GovCIO Media and Research. With me today is Deputy Editor Kate Macri. Hi, Kate.
Hi, Alex.
So you had the opportunity to chat with Dan Folliard, CDO at SOCOM. How'd it go?
I thought it went really well. I really enjoyed getting a more holistic perspective on the impact data can have on an organization. I feel like Chief Data Officer isn't really the sexiest title, and sometimes we don't really know what does a Chief Data Officer do, because it's like, okay, so he's in charge of the data. What does that mean? And so it was really interesting getting his perspective on how data is impacting their work with JADC2, Joint All-Domain Command and Control, that initiative with DoD, and then also cybersecurity and also AI, and basically just seeing how it can trickle down and touch all of these different parts of an organization and help them be more effective. So yeah, it was a good interview.
So I am one of those people who doesn't really know what a chief data officer does. Can you tell me a bit about Dan's position and just what the job entails?
So Chief Data Officer usually is responsible for setting the data standards and data governance for how data is managed within an organization. So they're the ones who are responsible for like organizing it and making sure data is being, shared properly, it's being secured properly. So it's one of those weirdly unique positions where you kind of touch a bunch of different things, because cybersecurity matters a lot to the CDO because they're in charge of the data. That also means making sure it's secure. So like you still have a chief information security officer, but their scope is a little wider. I guess I would say a chief data officer is more focused specifically on data and less so some of the other things. What they do touches like what the CIO does, what the CISO does, what the CTO does. They're kind of like the glue holding all of those C-suite tech positions together, if that makes sense.
So let's talk about data at SOCOM. You already mentioned JADC2, AI, but can we talk a little bit more specifically about what Dan's focusing on?
Yeah, so he did talk about some of his big priorities right now. First is data strategy, setting a foundation, policies, governance, helping develop data literacy at SOCOM and data talent. That's a big part of what he's focused on right now. But then he's also focused on being an advocate for data analytics and AI. So taking that data and like going further with it. So plug in command processes, personnel and resources, and making sure the data is ready to be used, which is kind of like a weird jargony term, but data readiness basically just means like, this is something that I can use for the job I'm doing right now, and I can access it right now. And I know that it's correct and that it's reliable and that there isn't any problem with the data quality or the accuracy or anything like that. So that's kind of what data readiness means. And SOCOM for data readiness operates under the Voltus perspective for data readiness. And Voltus is an acronym which stands for visible, accessible, understandable, linked, trustworthy, interoperable, and secure. Kind of a mouthful. And that's a common framework across DoD. So at the department level for SOCOM, when they are putting out what they call data decrees, they're always in alignment with Voltus principles. So they want to make sure that basically all of the policy decisions they make about how data is handled, where it's stored, how it's secured, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, falls in line with the Voltus perspective.
Well, with all of that in mind, let's take a listen to your conversation.
So, Dan, thanks so much for taking the time to talk about some of your data and data management priorities at SOCOM. To start off our conversation today, I would like to congratulate you since you are relatively new to this position, and I'm hoping you can tell me a little bit about your data priorities as the new CDO of SOCOM.
Hey, Kate. First of all, thanks so much for having me on. I'm glad to meet you and really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today. First off, let me just say I'm incredibly excited to be on the SOCOM team. It's a great mission. It's a great team, and I've been really fortunate to inherit a really strong data team and a boss as well that is laser focused on creating a data-driven command ecosystem here at SOCOM. So I guess the way I'd frame my answer to your question is through three lenses. The first priority is providing bureaucratic leadership, and the second is delivering data-driven insights for performance improvements. And then third, I would say, are finding and exploiting those opportunities for SOCOM to lead as the technology evolves. So let me explain a little bit about each one of those. With respect to bureaucratic leadership, we have a data strategy here at SOCOM, and I won't kind of give you chapter and verse of what it says, but essentially it's focused on setting the foundations in policy and governance, really taking a hard look at the data force structure and talent we have, and improving aggregate force data literacy, and then thinking through what the right architecture is across the command to be able to take the data and turn it into insights. So really job one under bureaucratic leadership is to really implement the data strategy. Job two, I would say, is to plug into all of the command processes, everything from personnel to resources, and be that advocate for data analytics and AI across the command, and just have a seat at the table in all these internal command processes that drive strategy to resources. And then the third aspect of bureaucratic leadership, I would say, is take this really robust community of data practitioners that we have spread out across our components and theater special operations commands, and really pull them together and really define what the pain points are for our software community of practice and be able to work those. The second aspect of my priorities is delivering insights for mission performance. So our commanding general sort of has two halves of his brain. The first half is focused on service-like responsibilities. He's the equivalent of a CEO of a $13 billion a year operating budget with express statutory authority for organizing, training, equipping the soft formation. And the second part of his brain is focused on his combatant command responsibilities with respect to a variety of operational matters, from counterterrorism to crisis response to campaigning. So it may be counterintuitive, but the first priority, at least from this command, has been getting its business data in order, because that's how we organize, train, and equip the soft force of the future. So data related to manpower, money, material, and education, and creating a single source of truth from that data to be able to derive insights and make better business decisions across this $13 billion a year operating budget. The third part, and I would say sort of one of the more exciting parts of the portfolio, is looking for opportunities for SOCOM to lead as the technology evolves. Much of our work is focused on getting the data right, and hopefully we can talk about that later. But being able to plug into this amazing innovation ecosystem within the special operations community at the operational tactical levels, and be able to derive meaningful capabilities, tools, practices, and be able to scale those. Again, as the technology changes at a pace that the entire public sector and private sector are trying to keep up with. So this really relies on strong executive sponsorship from the leadership team at SOCOM. I've got to be inside the decision cycle for business decisions and operational decisions in particular, to be able to apply data for insights. And then, really it's based on a foundation of trying to make relentless incremental progress in terms of showing the value of taking data-driven approaches to the problems we have. And again, I'm just incredibly fortunate to be here. There's just a tremendous amount of data and AI leadership that's happened throughout Special Operations Command. And I'm hoping that we can add some bureaucratic leadership and some insights on top of that.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds like a really big job, a really big set of duties that you have to accomplish here. So I actually wanted to clarify real quick. Before you were in this role, you were the Chief Digital and AI Office Chief Operating Officer at the Pentagon. Are you still serving in that role while you're also CDO at SOCOM, or is that something that you only did for a short time before coming over to SOCOM?
Yeah, I appreciate the chance to clarify that. No, I'm full time here at Special Operations Command. The last assignment I had after nearly 20 years in the Pentagon was to help establish the DoD CDAO, and for context, that was merging together four organizations into one. So I was kind of focused on the bureaucratic mechanics of that, the personnel side, and the funding side, and sort of the real painful process, if you will, of bureaucratically reorganizing within the Department of Defense.
Sure. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about the role of artificial intelligence in your job right now, because, data is the foundation for artificial intelligence capabilities. And obviously, AI is a big priority for the Defense Department with the launch of this new office, and it's pretty important across the services right now. Data and AI experts have been talking about how data readiness is a really critical foundation for functional AI. So how are you working towards data readiness with consistent data standards, governance, et cetera, at SOCOM to get ready for AI?
Yeah, I appreciate the chance to address this. And I spend a lot of my time on this aspect of the portfolio. For context, just to reiterate what you just said, good data sets the foundation for moving on to these more predictive and ML-based tools that are going to allow us to take the technology to the next level. So we've got to really focus on getting the data right. And I think in context of the DoD journey on this technology, I do think, we probably moved very quickly to focus on AI, whereas now we're sort of taking a step back to really focus on getting that foundational data in order. And as you know, there's a lot of technical debt in the department that we have to work through in order to get the data right. So let me kind of walk you through three levels in which I think about and operationalize data readiness. So at the highest level, we are committed to the principle of Vaultus. And Vaultus stands for, we want to make our data visible, accessible, understandable, linked, trustworthy, interoperable, and secure. So it's kind of a mouthful. We just summarize it with Vaultus. So I think from a department level, the Deputy Secretary in particular has been incredibly helpful to set forth a series of data decrees in alignment with these Vaultus principles. And what we want to do is make sure that these principles are sort of the ethos of all of our functional communities within the department, and certainly within SOCOM. Everything from personnel data to operational data to logistics data to financials. So everyone from our general officers down to our contracting officers can commit to these data principles. And just as a matter of context, it's been incredibly impressive to watch the department's attitude on data change, particularly over the past few years. And we can talk more about that. If you click down from the principal level, my focus is on how do we manage data as a product. We do talk a lot about treating data as a strategic asset, but what does that mean practically in terms of the processes and procedures that we put in place to take that idea that data is our strategic asset and turn it into reality? And what that comes down to is we actually have to manage it, and we need to focus senior leader attention on managing it, setting targets and metrics around our data. So let me give you a few examples. Data visibility is best instantiated by our commitment to data cataloging, just making sure that all of our data is visible across the organization. We've got a really solid catalog and strong data stewardship to go along with that. To make the data trustworthy, we have to have authoritative data sources that allow us to build a system of accountability to drive data quality. We want to be able to assess how interoperable and accessible our data is. Where is it? What does it connect to? What should it connect to? Which data layer does it need to go in? What does it mesh to? So really just putting management principles and functions around our data. And then if you click down to the lowest level, there's so much data in the Department of Defense and even at SOCOM between operational data, business data, intelligence data. We don't want to boil the ocean, and we want to let the key questions drive the value chain for our data. What we want to be able to do is not try to go after every piece of data, but really let the decision makers guide us in terms of where we need to put our time and attention to get the data right, and let the questions drive the focus. So in sum, it's commitment to Vaultus. We want to manage the data, and we want to go after data that matters.
Gotcha. Yeah, that sounds like a really big task. So I wanted to follow up on something you mentioned about how you need authoritative data sources for a system of accountability to drive data quality. I feel like federal government has been talking a lot about how to manage AI in an ethical way and not feed AI capabilities data sets that are already flawed, because that means you're just going to get a flawed AI capability, whatever that looks like, or a flawed algorithm. How are you guys accounting for this from a data perspective and trying to make sure that you really have what you need in order for AI?
Yeah, look, I appreciate that question because we're committed to following solid principles for AI assurance, and making sure that we, when we do actually get to the point where we're ready, we have data ready to put into a model and begin to apply machine learning against it, that we've got the appropriate procedures on the other end as we start to create those models to test and evaluate those models for bias in particular, and quality as well. So it's really, the work that goes into test and evaluation, AI assurance, and trustworthiness. Once you have, an ML pipeline and a data model, an AI data model, is incredibly serious, because we need these systems and these platforms and these algorithms to work, not just with respect to all of the the consequentials we need to make at the enterprise level, but particularly when we start thinking about the nature of soft operations globally. So we're committed to following AI assurance principles, and there's, I think, very solid extant policy guidance from the Office of the Secretary of Defense to help us adhere to those.
We're going to take a break from today's interview and play a game I call Archive Deep Dive, where I challenge our hosts to identify a previous guest on our podcast. Playing today are Deputy Editor Kate Macri and Senior Researcher Sarah Seibert. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Alex.
Here are the rules. I will play a clip, and if you know the answer, buzz in using a buzzword. Today's buzzword is simple. It's AI.
Oh, okay.
If you get it wrong, the other player gets a chance to guess. If neither of you get the answer, I open the floor to random guessing until somebody gets it right, or I give up and tell you. There are 3 clips today. Are you ready?
Yes.
I think so.
All right, here is clip number 1.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I think supporting users and really providing communications on a global scale has really been one of SOCOM's, in my opinion, core competencies.
Yes.
So this is the previous SOCOM CDO. I don't remember his name though. Does this even count?
No.
It's totally slipping. It's the previous SOCOM CDO, if you can remember his name, Sarah.
Oh, man, this
He's
is
no
like
longer the CDO. I'm actually interviewing the new CDO next week. What's his name?
I'm not sure. When was this recorded?
It was last spring. It was like May timeframe, I think. Yeah, or
Season
June.
5, yeah.
It might have been early June. It was after SOFIC.
So my hint for you is that this person shares a name with these two famous, I guess, children's stories, Blank and the Wolf and Blank Rabbit.
Peter.
Something.
Hood.
No.
I was thinking Wolf, Little Red Riding Hood.
I don't know. The best I can do is the previous SOCOM CDO. I'm literally
Peter.
totally blanking on his name.
All right. Well, the answer is Peter Trajakis.
Well, see, that's
CIO,
why.
so-
Oh, wait, CIO. Oh, I was super wrong.
I mean,
Why did I think it was the CDO?
I'm going to double check, but according to our website, it's CIO. Maybe that's a typo.
No, that's right. That should be right. Wow. I really messed that up.
Well, we learn something new every day, but it is correct that this was actually, it was published in July, but yeah, you got the right time.
Yeah, I'm like, wow, super way off here.
Well,
I don't know why I thought he was the CDO. I got SOCOM.
Yeah.
and you did, and that's half the battle. Well, you've got 2 more opportunities to guess correctly. Our next clip is...
Both of the programs, challenge.gov and citizenscience.gov, were created in
AI.
response.
Oh, it's GSI.
Yes.
And she's part of our Women Tech Leaders group. Jara from GSI.
I'm going to give it to you. Meador is the last name.
Yeah.
Jara Meador, Director of Open Innovation, TTS, GSA.
Clip 3. Another
Clip 3.
tiebreaker.
I know, seriously.
All right, here we go.
So the expectations and what needs to be done in this job for the department, I have obviously a foundation that I can build upon. So I'd imagine it would be more of a challenge if I was totally private sector and then came into this and then trying to get my hands around the budget process and what's happening in the telework and how they are managing everything.
This is not someone I interviewed. I don't think. Am I right about that?
I believe so.
Okay.
So AI, but I don't know an answer. My guess is someone from OMB. But I can't think. That's my guess. My hint to Kate is I think it's somebody from OMB.
Well, it's a pretty bad hint because it's wrong.
Oh,
No, because she said the department. Nobody refers to OMB as a department.
true.
So I think it's Cybercast. Am I right about that?
It's a GovCast.
Shoot. Of like it's definitely a woman.
Position in the title or procurement?
Nope.
Wow. When was this recorded?
This is all the way from season 3.
Ah, well.
Before either of us were working here.
My hint for you, I'm going to give you the title at the time. I don't believe she's still there, but CIO at DHS.
Oh, Karen Evans.
Karen Evans, yes.
That doesn't count though, because like when was this?
Let me
Was this-
find it. This was...
Was this after I started? Was this 2020?
I think this was 2020. Let's see. Well, so we interviewed her when she was at Energy, and then we had an interview we did another interview shortly after she started, and for some reason it's not popping up in my initial
She
search.
became CIO like right after I started.
Right, 3/22, July 31st, 2020.
Oh, so that was right after I. Oh yeah. So Amy did that interview. Yes,
That's right.
that was right. That was like literally like 2 months. No, that was 1 month after I started.
And this
Oh, wow. It
was,
such a
I
long
guess,
time ago.
4 months into my time here as well, all the way back in 2020. How time flies. Back then, they didn't have fun game sections during the podcast, and now you're listening to us flail trying to guess correctly in the awful game I call Archive Deep Dive. Kate, Sarah, thank you for playing, and now back to the episode.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, Alex.
So I want to change gears a little bit because I'm interested in the cybersecurity component of all of this. So the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency has told us in a couple of interviews now about how important data readiness is to making sure you have a sound cybersecurity strategy, because you can't protect your data and protect your assets if you don't know where your data is or how it's being used or who's accessing it. So I'm curious, how does data management and your responsibilities as CDO impact cybersecurity at SOCOM? And I'm wondering, do you work closely with the CISO and cybersecurity office on this particular area?
Yeah, let me just emphasize, cybersecurity is critically important to us at SOCOM. We know the threat vectors are real, they're active, and there are a lot of them. And we have to take this seriously at the command, given the nature of our operations globally. And I like to think about kind of how we do this from a CDAO perspective in 3 frames. And you mentioned it. The first and most critical part of this is our relationship with the Chief Information Officer. Right. And his team here at SOCOM, which owns the CISO functions. And I'll just say that the relationship with the CIO is probably the most important one for a CDAO to be successful. They own the networks, and they own the risk to the networks. And so, the constant dialogue is this balance between speed and risk that, again, me as sort of the demanding customer in terms of, how fast we want to be able to move things, and, the CIO as the owner of the risk, having to maintain ultimate accountability for our cybersecurity posture. A second piece that we try to bring within CDAO is implement strong data stewardship on data management best practices. And again, this is back to treating our data as a product. We want to make sure that it's fully cataloged. All of our data has to have we have to have clarity on where the attributes of the data are, and it has to be supported by strong data stewardship throughout the command. We want to make sure all of our sensitive data is appropriately documented and protected, whether it's personal data, whether it's health-related data, or law enforcement sensitive data. So a lot of this goes back to best practices with respect to data stewardship. And then the third piece of this, I think, is partnering throughout the command to understand our vulnerabilities. Moving data across domains from, commercial internet to higher levels of classification. That's one aspect. We want to think hard about classification issues as we start to aggregate and link this data together. And then critically, once it's aggregated and linked, how and where we secure it. And then another piece of partnering around the vulnerabilities is just being able to understand some of the risks with respect to our digital footprint as a command as well. So to wrap it up, I'd say that, the most important piece of this is linking arms with the CIO and practicing strong data stewardship to balance the security risk with the opportunities provided by the technology.
Sure. And I wanted to follow up on that as well, because I'm curious about the role that Zero Trust plays in all of this. Is that something that you guys think about and consider from the CDO office perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we will partner closely with our CIO for that. They are our lead within the command. They sort of will own the infrastructure component of what we're doing here. And Zero Trust is a huge priority, not just at the command, but as you know, at the DoD level as well.
So I wanted to change gears again and talk about the Joint All-Domain Command and Control Initiative across the Defense Department. Data is obviously a huge component here. It's basically the foundation of this initiative. Can you discuss SOCOM's efforts around JADC2 and how you're preparing data to support this effort from a combatant command perspective. And if you have any challenges or successes that you'd like to talk about, I would love to hear about those.
Yeah, Kate, you noted that, JADC2 is a major focus, not just for SOCOM, but really the entire department is putting its shoulder behind this. And we've seen really strong leadership from the senior echelons of the department, all the way to the secretary and the deputy, the OSD CDAO, the joint staff, the services, the combatant commands, all of whom are significantly engaged in trying to move the ball on this. I'll note that Northcom just had another global information dominance experiment a few weeks ago. And we're really encouraged here at SOCOM in terms of the direction that we're moving as a joint force, both in terms of the level of leadership engagement and then the overall approach to establishing a campaign of learning and experimentation and testing how we're moving on this. And the challenge is substantial. As you know, the legacy technical debt across the joint force here is a barrier to scale. And it is all about the data, being able to move it to the right place at the right time. And it's got to work in the environment in which it's going to be deployed. And those conditions matter. So as it pertains specifically to SOCOM, we're a microcosm of the joint force. We're in every combatant command through our theater special operations commands. We're in every service through our service components. And what that creates is, we have all the good and bad pathologies of all this technical debt within our own formation, particularly as it relates to data standards, location of the data, ability to move the data. So we're a microcosm of that JADC2 problem that the enterprise is trying to go after. I will say that SOCOM has been and is a pathfinder in JADC2. We've got a lot of reps on Ops Intel Fusion over the past 20 years, particularly in the counterterrorism fight. And a lot of that has produced, a real tangible set of insights from modern data management practices, approaches, and tools to be able to do operations in that CT environment. And what we're trying to do is feed those lessons and those, those trial and error reps that we've had as the department undertakes its JADC2 journey. I'll just end with, that we're fully lined up in support of the Joint Forces efforts. We're involved in this campaign of learning. We're certainly embedded with each of the services as they're making their own investments and choices. And I think, we're thinking through here at SOCOM, not just, what we can do in an actual conflict with JADC2. The NDS calls for the department to focus on campaigning as well. And SOCOM's role left of conflict with respect to campaigning is critical. So we're really trying to think through, not just from a warfighting perspective, how JADC2 becomes real in support of the joint force, how we at SOCOM could do data-driven campaigning to succeed left of conflict.
Awesome. So I just have a couple more questions for you before we wrap up here. First off, what's the hardest part of your job right now?
Yeah, Kate, that is an excellent question. Again, and I just want to emphasize the ingredients we have at SOCOM to be successful are many. We've got strong leadership that is committed to making this command data-driven. We've got resources to be able to start the journey in terms of bringing the data together and delivering insight. And we've got a tremendous amount of partners, both within the formation and outside the formation, that are going to help us on this journey. So I would like to start with the positive to say that I think that we have all the ingredients here at SOCOM to be successful. I will say that, systemically, not at SOCOM necessarily, but across the department, the concept of taking data analytics and AI and making part of the bloodstream of all of our processes and all of our operations at scale, it's still a task. We're still sort of on the fringes in some ways. Many of my partners throughout the other combatant commands or even within the services, they have to have a seat at the table And so I'm fortunate at SOCOM because I have a seat at the table. But I could certainly see, my partners across the department still trying to build out their data force structure and trying to make sure that they can be an advocate for their portfolio in some of those big DoD processes.
Absolutely. What would you say is the best part of your job right now?
Yeah, so that is a great question. I think that there is an ocean of opportunity to succeed and really launch this capability into the bloodstream of how we make decisions at scale at SOCOM. And so the best part of my job is being able to say, from all of these amazing opportunities, where are we going to get the biggest return on investment in terms of decision impact and changing the culture of the enterprise to leverage all these modern data management tools and practices that are available. So it's almost a challenge just because, there's so much opportunity. We've got to pick the best ones.
Sure. So I don't think I have any more questions for you at the moment. Is there anything else that you wanted to add before we wrap up here?
No, Kate, just to thank you again for making the time to talk to me. I've been on the data journey for a little while in the department for almost 20 years. And I can tell you that what we're trying to do at scale is really hard to do. And I'm just super excited, again, that we've got all the right ingredients here at SOCOM to be successful. And I'm looking forward to seeing where this journey takes us.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Dan. I really appreciate it.
All right, Kate. Thanks. Take care.
Thank you, Kate. That was a very interesting conversation. Before we let our listeners go, do you have any last takeaways you want to leave them with?
So I think one of the interesting things about the conversation that is also a consideration for a bunch of other federal agencies right now is the need for authoritative data sources for a system of accountability to drive data quality, because you really need that in order to have AI implement any kind of AI capability. And AI is a really big priority for a lot of federal agencies right now, especially DoD. They're really, really focused on that. So making sure that your data sources are reliable and accurate, and that you're maintaining data standards so that they stay that way, and so that data isn't being used in a way that compromises the data quality or the accuracy, or like how it's stored or how it's managed, is really, really important. And so that's something that Dan is really focused on right now, that and getting SOCOM's data ready to contribute to JADC2. So data visibility, data cataloging, those are also really important. That's really kind of the first step. And it's really interesting hearing from him about how, data visibility really is the first step for anything that you're doing in IT, even cybersecurity, because if you don't know what you have, where you have it, or why you have it, which is something that the concept of data visibility is trying to solve, then you can't have an effective cybersecurity strategy. So as someone who focuses primarily on cybersecurity and covers a lot of cybersecurity, it's always really interesting to hear how these other things, such as data and being a chief data officer, actually have a lot to do with cybersecurity and also other IT initiatives like AI.
Yeah, it's all interconnected. And, from my perspective, data visibility, it seems like something that should be a given. I mean, I guess it's like a library, with the Dewey Decimal System versus my bookshelf, which is just a mess. Which one would you be able to actually find something there?
Yeah, and I think that's something that's really hard in the cloud. I think that's partly a cloud problem because, before, when you just had these legacy mainframe like network infrastructures, you could, like, if you worked for DoD, you could only access what you needed to do your job when you like went into the building and used like the laptop in the building and like went through all these security procedures in order to access it. And it's all like it stays there in like that physical location. You know what I mean? And that's not true anymore with the cloud. Like now you can technically access this stuff anywhere. But that also makes it easier to have a lot more data, basically, and information about things just floating around out there and like losing track of it because it's like everywhere. And people are in different places accessing it. And that just, makes it hard to keep track of. So I think that's a really big challenge right now for all of government, really.
Sounds like SOCOM is doing some spring cleaning, very well timed as we are getting into March now. And with that, that's all for today's GovCast. If you like what you heard, make sure that you're subscribed on the podcast platform of your choice. We'll be back in 2 weeks with a brand new GovCast. But until then, I'm Alexander Bolova.
I'm Kate Macri.
Thank you for listening. GovCast, along with HealthCast and Cybercast, is a production of GovCIO Media and Research. For more podcasts and to check out the other shows, head to govciomedia.com. Watch out for new episodes released every Tuesday and Wednesday across our shows. You can follow all of them on your favorite podcast platform. And if you like what you heard, make sure to let us know by leaving a review. And if you have any topics you think we should look into, contact us at newsletter@govcio.com.